Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 733 for the 26th of February, and a lot of massive changes again for this report, so stay tuned. There's a lot to talk about. First thing first, there is a Russian Sukhoi 34 shot down over Ukraine. This is claimed by the Ukrainian Air Force. And this is one of the latest report coming out from the Ukrainian side just before I started recording. And we move on. At the Kherson Front, there is still reports of Russian forces attacking the bridgeheads of the Ukrainian forces. It's unclear where the attack is. I will just continue to put it at Krinky until there is confirmation of the loss of Krinky from the Ukrainian side. Because even based on the Ukrainian mapping deep state UA, Krinky continues to be like this as a gray zone. So I think even the deep state UA is not entirely sure what's the situation over there. And over on the northern bank of the Dnipro River, there is a strike on Berislav, and then there is also another attack against a radar station pretty far away from the front line over at Stary Bodanivka on the other side of this Mykolaiv river. So very interesting. Which means the Russia there is starting to starting to run out of targets for the Russian forces near Krinky, which also signify that the possibility that the Ukrainian attempt at Krinky has been gone. They have spread out their forces or move away their artillery systems or something, because there is very few geolocation of Russian strikes on Ukrainian equipments in this area near Krinky, and the strikes are getting further and further. So it could be the case where they have given up this attempt to go across the Kherson River, and which is why the Russians are now looking for new targets. So we move on away, going into the Zaporizhzhia Front. So this is Zaporizhzhia city. This is Zaporizhzhia Front. At the Zaporizhzhia Front, first thing first, there is a NASAM, North American surface-to-air missile system. They uses the MRAM which is supposed to be an air-to-air missile, as the missile system. So this was destroyed, and basically the video, if I'm not wrong, if I didn't remember wrongly, it's pretty clear that it's a NASAM. So it was destroyed, and this is pretty far away. It's actually in the northwestern part of Zaporizhzhia city. So this distance from the front line is over 50 kilometers. It's actually really far away. So it just shows the capability of the Russian forces to hit something in the rear. So that is something to take note. There's nothing over at the Kupyansk sector. We move into the Orikhiv sector. At the Orikhiv sector, the Russian forces conduct fire missions on Orikhiv as well as Mala Tomashka. So this is not an attack. This is not an attack. This as a ground assault. It's more like a fire mission. And over in the salient, the Russian forces indeed has been trapped by the Ukrainian mining. There doesn't seem to be an easy attempt for the Russians to push out. So fighting continues to be reported from the south of Robotine and from the western part of Robotine. The fighting is still ongoing at Robotine largely, and I think the remote mining has done its job in delaying the Russian advance. So the battle of Robotine continues. Any rumors about Robotine being captured is premature. So we move on at the Huyaipole sector. So this is the Huyaipole sector, and the Ukrainian forces conduct an attack against Mafopil. So this is part of a series of Ukrainian counter-attack across the entire Ukrainian front, Ukrainian war. So this is just the first one that I will be covering. So this is Mafopil, and so nothing much to talk about. I believe this is just very probing in nature. So that's all from the Zaporizhzhia Front. We move on to the Donetsk Front. So this is the Donetsk Front, and this is Velika Novosylka sector. We can call this the Zolotaneva or Donetsk, Novodonetsk sector, Voleda sector, and Marinka sector. So I just do a general picture. Russian forces are attacking at Staromayoske, Uruzhaine, north of Novodonetsk towards Vodian, at Novomikhailivka, Ukrainian forces counterattack at Novomikhailivka, Russia attack still within the area of Boyeda, attacking Georgiivka, south of Krasnohorivka and east of Krasnohorivka. So this is the strategic picture. As you can see, the Russian forces is extremely active, particularly over at this Marinka sector. So over in this southern side, this attacks can zoom in. Okay, just do this then. The Russian forces are attacking Staromayoske and Uruzhaine. This is nothing really much. I don't see this as a serious assault to capture the village just yet. Fighting is reported north of Novodonetsk, according to DPA UA, the pro-Ukrainian source. So we will continue to monitor. This is related to the fighting at Zolotaneva. I think Ukrainians are putting a very strong line over there, so there's nothing much the Russians can do about. And there is an attack towards Vodian. This is very usual, but we always never see the frontline changes over there. We move into the Marinka sector minus Krasnohorivka. Russian forces continue to be attacking within Novomikhailivka. They're still trapped at Boyeda, and there is attack over Georgiivka. Ukrainian forces counterattack at Georgiivka, probably to stop the Russian attack moving towards Krasnohorivka, and Ukrainian forces are conducting counterattack over Novomikhailivka itself. And over in the Krasnohorivka, the situation is pretty desperate, very sudden. The Russian forces suddenly make a surprise breakthrough and hit the southern part of Krasnohorivka. Krasnohorivka is an extremely heavily defended city. This is as good as Avdiivka in terms of defenses, entrenchment, and preparation for war. This is a frontline city for the past 9 years, particularly during the Ukrainian Civil War. For 8 years, this has been just like Avdiivka, a frontline city. So this is actually a superbly entrenched location. If you zoom in, even in your Google Maps, you will be able to see the entrenchments. This is a very heavily defended city, and it is a surprise that the Russians suddenly found a weak spot and broke through over from the south. And so some people, when you look at some of the mapping, you may see this as a river. This is not a river. This is just some lake, and these are just lakes. This is actually just a lake. There is a main road over here. This is a main road, and there's a dirt road over here. This is traversable by armored vehicles or vehicles like BMP that can survive some level water levels, and so this is not impossible to cross. So particularly over at the main road region, and it's interestingly is that this outpost over here, this industrial or mine region, I believe this is a mine. Yeah, this is the Trudovskaya mine. This has always been fought over between the two sides. And the last known is that this is actually a gray zone. And the Ukrainian forces, while the Russians were here in this area here, the Ukrainians have been holding a strong position around this tree line. And it looks like somehow, as everyone is looking at Avdiivka, suddenly there is this breakthrough. It could be a possibility that the Russian forces conduct some heavy bombardments along these tree lines, perhaps by TOS-1A, and weakening or destroying the defenses over here, and they make a run for it and break through in this area here and storming into the south, because I think Ukrainian lines are really weak right now and very demoralized. So given the weakness of the Ukrainian lines, and maybe the redeployment of Ukrainian forces to help to defend Avdiivka, because this is very near to Avdiivka. If we zoom out a bit, Avdiivka is just next door, Avdiivka Front is over here. So the Ukrainian forces may have drew forces from Krasnohorivka region to try to plug the hole and thus weaken the defenses over Krasnohorivka, and that could be a possibility. And the Russians are putting pressure. They were attacking from the east actually, and this information is coming from Ukrainian sources, DPA UA, and then maybe the Ukrainians were distracted by this attack. Then suddenly there is this storming in, and once the Russian forces able to have a foothold in the south, then things are going to get really difficult, because as we have seen throughout the last month of Russian advances, the Russians, every time they attack the settlement, it comes from two different directions. And when they come from two different directions, the defenders will find it hard to coordinate where to actually concentrate their forces. Particularly, Krasnohorivka is not a small city. This is the size of Avdiivka. If you can see, this is Avdiivka. If I zoom in, come over here, this is almost the size of Avdiivka. So this is actually not an easy place for the Ukrainian forces to just, not an easy place for the Russians to just attack and conquer easily. But the Russians are trying. Heading this area here is most likely a diversionary. The reason is because this is where the main line is. This is the main line of defense is. So the Russians storming in from this direction is almost inconceivable. This is as good as the Russian forces trying to storm New York. It just don't make sense, Just like Avdiivka, it's not the place where you are able to penetrate through. This is just too heavily defended in this direction. But the south is a weak spot. This is the soft spot for Krasnohorivka, and if the defenders or the commanders in this region really think about it, they should be securing this part, the southern part. But maybe lack of resources or something, and they probably neglected this, and the Russians break through. And once they break through, if they head towards the west, then this city is going to fall very easily, because then everything else behind is just so soft. It's just a soft belly behind. So anyway, this is the situation over at the Donetsk Front. We move on into the Avdiivka Front. At the Avdiivka Front, a Russian Avdiivka offensive continues despite the capture of Avdiivka, with fighting reported at Avdiivka, Stepove, towards Olivka, towards Donetsk, at Zhivany, at Pervomaiske don't have, at Nevelsky. Ukrainian forces attack at Novobakhmutivka. I think I'm not sure if Avdiivka, I can't see. At Zhivany, Donetsk, at Pervomaiske. And let's see. And also at Avdiivka. So this is the strategic situation over at the Avdiivka Front. And there's nothing much to talk about in the south. In the center part, as I mentioned in the previous report, multiple previous reports, this area here is the weak spot, because this is the soft belly. Ukrainian strong lines is over in this area as Stepove, as well as Pervomaiske and Nevelsky. And even in the strong lines, they are getting pushed back by the Russian forces already. They kept losing ground. So not to mention this, so this is also a strong point. So not to mention this soft spot that the Russians are penetrating through, that is taking advantage of, and which is why we see the biggest frontline change is over in this soft spot. And in this soft spot, Russian forces have taken more grounds on the eastern part of Olivka. They are penetrating and going to punch through. They're going to attack from two sides, from the southeast and the northeast towards Olivka. The Russian push towards the northern part of Donetsk spook the Ukrainian forces that is holding up in the north of Zhivany. They run away, allowing the Russian forces to storm in and conquer Zhivany. Based on Russian sources also says that they are attacking from the south of Donetsk, and they are going to hit Donetsk from the south as well. Gray zones have already penetrated into the southeastern part of Donetsk, which means that there is already possibility that the Russians are already starting to storm Donetsk. The same goes for Olivka. The Russian forces may have already started their battle of Olivka already. So all these frontline changes are significant, and the Ukrainians are struggling to deal with this. This is the first line of defense after Avdiivka city, and this first line of defense is collapsing super fast. After the initial, I would say success by the Ukrainian forces to hold this line. What happened to to hold this line over at Lashtoshkine, because Lashtoshkine actually held 2-3 days more than I thought it would. I thought it would collapse rather fast. It did not. The Ukrainian forces actually managed to hold the Russian forces there for a little while, but once this line broke, everything behind seems to lack and fortifications. It looks like the Ukrainians have not been working hard enough to create insurance, create more lines of defenses, heavy entrenchment and fortifications to prepare for a possibility of a Russian breakthrough. If you look at the Russians are very paranoid. If you look at the line of defense over at Zaporizhzhia, and in fact I didn't even draw the ones over at Donetsk or Bakhmut Front, it's all super thick. They are talking about like kilometers deep of entrenchments, and the Ukrainians seems to don't have that, and that is a surprise. Like this penetration is much faster than what the Ukrainian counteroffensive has done in the direction of Robotyne, which shows a little bit of complacency from the Ukrainians. To be fair, not to be fair, to be nice. So anyway, yeah, this is the situation over at this Avdiivka Front, and in the Stepove region, this is also a symbol of what is currently happening across the entire front line. As I mentioned before, this is actually a very strong line. Stepove line have held very well against the Russians for months and months, and the Russian forces cannot conquer Stepove. They just cannot break through. They tried many times. Many people died. Many equipment was destroyed. The Ukrainians constantly, put pressure on the Russians to keep them back. However, suddenly we have this sudden breakthrough where the Russian forces storm past Stepove and head all the way to the south eastern part of Avdiivka and capture more tree lines around this area here. And the Ukrainian forces is now forced into defending Avdiivka, and this is, I believe, the last line of defense before everything soft behind. So if Avdiivka fall, which I believe might be pretty fast given the air superiority of the Russians, I think the Russians would storm through within a few days, and then the battle will go to Semenivka, and the Russians will start to fan out from Avdiivka, and this is going to be a massive disaster. But if you support Ukraine, you have to give up the idea that the Ukrainians can hold this line. This line seems to be almost gone. I think this is hopeless at this moment. The next line of defense you should depend on is over here, along this river to Krasnohorivka and everything. So there's a series of heavy fortifications around here. So this is where I believe you should put your hopes on. I think the Ukrainians may not be able to hold on all these areas for much longer. Of course, this distance for the Russians to capture might still be, maybe a month away to 2-3 months possible, because war can be quite slow. But in the grand scale of things, I believe the next line of defense is going to be here, the next firm line. And if I'm Ukrainian commander, this is where I'm going to put my focus right now. The distance between this to the front line is around 10 kilometers. So this is where you should quickly build your defenses. And this line stretches all the way down to Krasnohorivka, which is one of the major forward operating base for the Ukrainians. So it makes sense because Krasnohorivka is compromised as well. So, this is where the Ukrainians have to put the next line of defense and really start to build it up right now. Like now. They have to build it now because there's no more time. So the window of opportunity to do constructions so near to the front line, 10 kilometers is really near, is within artillery range. You have to do it right now. If they don't do it, then the Russians are going to have one hell of a PR victory, and it's going to collapse Western support. So this is something to note. Talking about Western support, there is some crazy claims about coming out from France talking about they are considering sending NATO troops into Ukraine. I can 100% tell you, Russia is going to announce and say that they're going to prioritize target these NATO soldiers. If they step into Ukraine, they will be priority target. They will be missile strike and take out immediately first. So to discourage the NATO from doing more deployments into Ukraine. So it's just like the foreign fighter situation where early in the war, the Russians made a statement by missile striking one of the NATO bases in Ukraine that was housing all these foreign fighters to train them. In a single barrage, hundreds of foreign fighters died, and many of them just gave up. they don't even want to fight because they were so far away from the front line. They thought they were safe. So the same thing goes for the NATO troops, and I can tell you NATO troops are no difference from the Ukrainian troops, not much difference. No amount of training are going to make you bulletproof, shell-proof. You still die when a bullet hits you. It's just that you have better training, so you know what to do, but it doesn't make you shell-proof. Missile strike will still kill you. So anyway, at the New York front, Ukrainian forces attacking Pivdene. That's part of the counterattack. Nothing much to report here. We move into the Bakhmut front. So this is Bakhmut city, and this is the southern part of Bakhmut front. In the southern flank, Russian forces continue their attack over at Klishevka, Avdiivka, as well as Kudyomivka. The attack towards Dilievka was not repeated. It was not reported, so looks like that was just a one-off. So we'll continue to monitor because this is scary. An attack towards Dilievka is honestly really scary for the Ukrainians, because if it succeeds, it will collapse the entire southern flank of the Bakhmut front. And in the northern flank of the Bakhmut front, Russian forces continue their attack over in this area here. We're fighting reported at Bohdaniivka, south of Bohdaniivka, in the Chasiv region, in the north of Ivanivske, and at Ivanivske. And particularly, I want to talk about Ivanivske. At Ivanivske, the Russian forces, based on Russian claims, have continued their advance in the north and northeastern part. And I believe the information should be reliable because their initial reports about capturing of the northern flank has been corroborated by DPA UA. So around 2-3 days. So the Russian forces now, the Russian side, the Ryba, the pro-Russian source, now claims that the Russians has entered and captured the entire northeastern part of Ivanivske, and we probably is going to see this corroboration of the information from DPA UA as well in the next 2-3 days, unless there's a geolocation that come out, which then will actually trigger DPA UA to make an earlier commitment into conceding the grounds to the Russian side. And the Russians are conducting serious operations at Ivanivske. You have geolocation of airstrike within Ivanivske, and Russian forces geolocated just off the northeast of Ivanivske confirms Russian presence over at this position, which means that a lot of this information are very accurate, and the Russians are storming in. It looks like Ivanivske is going to fall really quickly because this amount of ground loss is really, really a lot. And I'm not sure if the Ukrainian forces have the will to continue to hold this ground. But Ivanivske itself is not particularly strategically that important I would say. In this area here, if you look at the situation, there's this very heavy line around here. So Ivanivske is just a forward place. The Russians can capture it, but it's not going to make a lot of strategic change, if you ask me. So and that's all from the Bakhmut front. And we move into Sivers. There's nothing over Sivers. We move into the Kreminna Front. At Kreminna Front, the focus is still over at Terny and Yampolivka, with the Russian forces attacking at the Terny region and Yampolivka, Ukrainian counterattack at Terny, and that's about it. There's not much to talk about in this area here. And we move further up north over at Zaporizhzhia Front. There's nothing over here. It continues to stay quiet, and then we go into the Kupyansk Front. So at the Kupyansk Front, we have a bit more. This zoom is bad. Okay, this is Kupyansk, and this is Kupyansk Front. At the Kupyansk Front, the Russian forces are attacking over at Sinkivka, Ivanivka, Tabaivka, and Pishani. And the Ukrainians are counter-attacking at Sinkivka. So what most significant is this increase in activities over on the eastern part of this Kupyansk Front. If we zoom in, we can see that the Russian forces is now, let me go down a bit. Is now attacking down towards Pishani, and they are also trying to expand out from Tabaivka. So, and then the attack continues to be pressuring on Ivanivska, which is actually a very strong Ukrainian line. So we will continue to monitor and see if this is going to develop to something. The last time the Russians tried did not work out. The last time they tried was on the 15th. So now after 10 days of planning and reorganization, they're going to give it another try. Tabaivka is a bit more interesting because the attack started on the 25th, and then so this is actually a second day of the Russian trying. Previously, they already tried 11 to 12, 18, 21. So the Russians have been trying to go out of Tabaivka, have not been very successful. So they're going to try again. They're going to see whether they can actually make it. And we move on from the Kupyansk Front into the Kharkiv, to the border regions. In the border regions between Russia and Ukraine, there was only just one geolocation. A Ukrainian mortar was destroyed at Avdiivka in the northern part of Sumy. So basically, it's over here near the border. This is a continuation of the Russians continuing to soften the Ukrainians over the border region, and this is Sumy city. So this is the situation, and this is the summary for the day of 733 for the 26th of February. So we're gonna do some conclusions.